Hello YouTube. In this video I'm going to show you how to do a clean install of Debian 8.2 Linux. This is an operating system that a great many Linux distributions are actually built off of, so why not go back to the source? Well, that's where we're going right now. So whenever you actually get it to boot up, you're going to first have to have either a USB bootable install media or a burnt copy of the DVD or the ISO. So once you actually have the DVD in place and you boot the system off of the disk, this is the screen you will get for the installation. You can either select the regular install or the graphical install. I highly advance, you go with the graphical install. Of all other things, you can also install it with speech synthesis for a speech synthesizer that can actually sit there and talk to you on the system. This is actually a very good option for those who are visually impaired, but for most of us, the graphical install is the way we're going to want to go. Highlight graphical install and hit enter. As it says at the bottom, press enter to boot or tab to edit menu. Now you need to select your country and language. Most of us are going to be doing English United States. Once you select your language, click next. Select your country, next. And then of course your keyboard layout, and then click continue. Now it's going to load components, and shortly we'll be at the point where we actually do some of the base configuration. Don't freak out, this part's actually not that difficult. Now you want to set it up with a host name. For this particular one, we're going to do Debian Lab. This is going to be a lab system. This is actually running in VirtualBox and a VM for demonstration purposes. So once you get your host name set, or if you leave it as default, click continue. Domain name, we're not connecting up to a domain. Unless you're setting this up in an enterprise environment, you really shouldn't be connecting up to a domain, so at this point click continue. Now it's going to come up for the network configuration, and if you're on Ethernet, it'll auto configure. If you're on wireless, it'll pop up giving you a screen to select your wireless device, your wireless router, the SSID. Once you select your wireless router, put in your passphrase, it'll connect up, and then you'll come to this screen. This is where you set the root password. Again, you want to make sure that this is something that's not super simple, not easy to guess, and definitely not something that's commonly related to you. You do not want your root password to be easily cracked. So once we get the root password put in, click continue. Now, full name for the new user. This is where you actually set up your primary user account. Since this is going to be a lab system, we're just going to name it CB Lab as normal. You can put whatever username you want in here. Remember, it all has to be small caps. Linux does not like having any of the letters capitalized in the usernames. Once you get your username put in, click continue. Username for your account. Continue. Choose password for the new user. Now, keep in mind, I'll go back real quick. Right here, full name. You can actually put in your full name. I'm not going to put in my full name. I'm just going to put in CB Lab. Whenever you get to this one, this is the username. The full name, you can put capital letters in. For the username, you want all to be small letters. And then put in a password. This needs to be different from your root account password. And again, still be something that's not super easy to guess. Bah. Ha, they're the same that time. Now you can set up your clock for your time zone. This is in Central. If you're in Mountain, Pacific, or Eastern, you'll select one of those. Click continue. You can hit guided, use entire disk, or you can do something else. You can set up the manual. Since this is going to be the only OS on here, I'm going to hit guided, use entire disk, select continue, select the disk, hit continue, and then do all files in one partition, click continue. And now all you got to do is with it on finish partitioning or write changes. As you can see, it'll automatically set up the swap partition and everything else. Click continue. And select yes to write the changes to the disk. Hit continue again. And now it's going to write all the partition changes and everything to the drive. It's going to go through and install the base system, set up the packages it needs, and from there it shall finish on its own. Alright, and once that part finishes, click continue, and you can just leave it on the FTP of your choice. Generally, it's going to try to select the one that's closest to you for your country. This one's going to be ftp.us.debian.org. Click continue. Alright, and once you get all that set up, it asks you for the HTTP proxy information. If you're running a proxy, most home users are not going to be running a proxy. So just click continue. If you are running a proxy, put the proxy information in right here. Now you're going to get this one that says configuring popularity contest. This choice can be modified later, blah, blah, blah. The system may anonymously supply distribution developers with statistics. I always leave that on no. I'm not going to tell them what I'm doing or let it report back on what I'm doing. So click continue. And as you can see, it'll continue on with installing select software. Now, here's where you can select your desktop environment. You can do GNOME, KDE, Cinnamon, Mate, LXDE, whatever you want to do, Xforce. I'm pretty partial to GNOME and Cinnamon, so I'm going to install both of those. I don't really worry too much about the SSH server or the web server, but the standard system utilities and print server are worth having, especially if you're going to run a printer, and the system utilities are always nice. So click continue after you select the desktop environments that you want. KDE is much, much more like Windows, so if you prefer something that's very similar to the Windows operating system, select that one. You will be rather surprised at how much like Windows it is. Click continue, and it'll go through and install those software packages. Alright, and on this screen it's giving you the option to configure GDM3, or you can use LightDM. I generally just use GDM3. Click continue. Alright, whenever that part finishes, it comes to the install grub bootloader on the hard disk. Make sure yes is selected. Click continue. Now, instead of enter device manually, select the hard drive down here, click continue, and it'll install the grub bootloader to that hard drive. Now it's going to finish the installation. And it says installation complete. Installation is complete, so it is time to boot into your new operating system. Make sure to remove the installation media, CD-ROM, or floppy so that you boot into the new system rather than restarting the installation. Click continue. Finishes up the system, unmounts everything, and reboots. Here's your grub bootloader. You have advanced options or the standard. Click on the Debian GNU Linux, and now it'll boot into Debian. And now we can log in. You can select right here, not listed, to log in as root. You really don't ever need to log in as root. So select your user and put in the password. As you can see, it's booted into Cinnamon, and it says Cinnamon is currently running without video hardware acceleration, and as a result, you may observe with higher than normal usage as it's rendering in software mode. That's fine. That basically just means it's not using the hardware options for video acceleration, which I really didn't want it to. I did not configure it with full-blown 3D graphics. I wasn't too worried about full-blown 3D graphics, as this is entirely for demonstration. So if you come down here and click on your menu, You have all these nice little options. It looks a lot like Linux Mint, especially if you boot into the Cinnamon desktop environment on Linux Mint. Go to games, you have a few games that it installs. Go to education, there's LibreOffice math, accessories, you have your archive manager, calculator, all that good garbage. Internet, you have your empathy chat or IM, Pigeon IM. You have Iceweasel for the web browser, which is a really tricked out badass version of Firefox. Come down here to sound and video, preferences, administration. There's lots of different things on here. Works really well. Of course, naturally it comes with LibreOffice. A lot of them nowadays do, rather than OpenOffice, which at one point in time was the normal one used for Linux. They've switched over to Libre. You can still install OpenOffice if you prefer, but LibreOffice works rather well. And this is your operating system. Works really well, very stable. Probably one of the primary reasons there are so many different distributions built off of Debian. This information's out there for absolutely everybody. As always, watch, like, and share. Have yourself a great day.